Welcome everybody to the 2020 award ceremony for the conferral of the Archbishop Desmond Tutu Fellowship. My name is Paul James. We're here today to celebrate the work of three wonderful and committed people to the process of global reconciliation. To begin, it's my honour to introduce Pat Anderson AO. AO is the Order of Australia. It's one of the most distinguished and highest awards in the nation. Pat is an Illawarra woman known nationally and internationally as a powerful advocate for the health of Australia's First Peoples. She has extensive experience in Aboriginal health, including community development, policy formation and research ethics, and she's been a recipient of many prestigious awards. Pat is chair of the Luitja Institute, which is the National Institute for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Research, and a board member of Global Reconciliation.
Thank you, Paul, for that introduction, and good evening, everybody. My greetings to you all from the lands of the Larrakia people, the Aboriginal traditional custodians and owners of the land on which Darwin is situated these days. Darwin is a small city on the northernmost tip of Australia, close to Indonesia, in fact. I am pleased and honoured to be able to speak to you today and to be part of this ceremony to recognise the work of three amazing women, Romina Calder, Safia and Tambu. Their work to promote the role of women and gender equity in their communities part of a worldwide movement. As such, their work not only benefits the women in their countries, but all of us, wherever we may be. We need courageous women to carry on that work, because all too often women are at the bottom of the social pile, subject to all kinds of violence and even in some cases torture and death. Violence against women is a human rights issue affecting women around the globe, wherever we may live. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, everywhere on this planet, in every society, we find women at the centre of the struggle for equality and justice. And we find women at the heart of every community, seizing with both hands their rights and responsibilities, caring for their families, their communities, and in turn, their societies. This is perhaps the fundamental essence of being woman. In the few moments I have, I would like to tell you something about my own story and how this consciousness of the role of women dawned on me and how it has informed my thinking ever since. It begins when I was a small girl growing up in the 1950s in Prep Camp here in Darwin. I hope you can hear me. There's an amazing thunderstorm happening. At that time, Prep Camp was home to many families rejected by the mainstream population. Families like Chinese, Japanese, Malays, Filipinos, Italians, Greeks, and of course Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families. Many of the Aboriginal people there were members of the stolen generations. The stolen generations have been forcibly taken as children from their Aboriginal families and have grown up in non-Indigenous institutions. In Darwin, that institution was called the Carlin Compound. My mother was taken by force from her Ayara family in the deserts of Central Australia, sometime in the early 1920s. Later on at Prep Camp, my mother was reunited with many of the girls with whom she grew up in the compound, although, like her, they were now women with families of their own. Prep Camp in the 50s was dominated by these women and their strong personalities and their collective histories. The aunties from the compound were ever present. Even from my earliest days, I was fascinated by them. I can still see them now. They seem so beautiful to my child's eye, always capable, always there. I watched them carefully, how they dressed, how they spoke, how they walked, how they presented themselves to the world, and how they acted in the world. And even though as a child I did not know the details about Carlin Compound, I was aware of the strong bond between these women and the sense of the collective they carried with them. Previously in the compound, deprived of their own families, they had to be mother, aunties and sisters to each other. Now on Prep Camp, they had the same sense of togetherness and solidarity. This solidarity extended to protecting each other from domestic violence. I can still remember one of the tactics the women used when I was a child was that if a woman had been beaten, the very next morning was that the spouse went to work, women would come out of their doorways and bang pots and pans and all kinds of instruments they could find and shout abuse at him. It was a shaming mechanism and it worked. Men really were ashamed. The solidarity of these women was a powerful deterrent to violence against men. Despite the deprivations, their collective resilience, strength and courage shone through. It was inseparable from who they were. They were great role models for me and the other young girls, and I have carried their example with me throughout my life. I believe that this is a profound common experience across the world. Our resilience and determination in the face of colonisation, poverty, inequality and and violence. Our families, children and communities depend on us to show these qualities and that we play this role. So today I respectfully acknowledge Ramina, Safia and Tambu and their work as part of that universal movement for women's equality, justice and freedom from violence. I congratulate them on receiving of the Desmond Tutu Reconciliation Fellowship Awards for 2020 in recognition of their work. And I wish them well for the future in the knowledge that their commitment to gender equality will help protect women across the globe and down through the generations. Thank you.
Many thanks, Pat. Your contribution to our thinking has been incredibly important over the years. And I welcome everybody from across the globe who are here today. Normally this event conducted by Global Reconciliation will be held in Melbourne Town Hall, but this year of COVID, the ceremony is occurring online. Global Reconciliation has been recognising global leaders in this space over many years, individuals such as June Oscar, Aung San Suu Kyi, and Zeramanian Frey, who, working locally and in an incredibly engaged way, have made a fundamental difference to the human condition. Global Reconciliation treats the process of reconciliation as one of reconciling difference, reconciling conflict, but celebrating difference. In other words, it's a difficult process. It's one where we're not aiming for harmony or comfort. We don't seek to overcome difference or to annul the boundaries between us. Rather, we celebrate those deep and human differences while working to make engagement across the boundaries positive, creative, rather than decisive and negative. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Paul Komisarov. Paul is one of the founders of Global Reconciliation and a current executive director. Paul is a physician, a philosopher, and an internationally renowned medical ethicist.
I thank you very much for the introduction. And I'd like also to thank Pat Anderson for her wonderful talk, which was made more dramatic and intense by the spectacular thunderstorm in the background. Was very, very appropriate for what you said. So friends and colleagues, men and women across several countries, I'd like to welcome you here and also to congratulate the new Desmond Tutu Reconciliation Fellows for their generous acceptance of the 2020 award. The Desmond Tutu Reconciliation Fellowship is administered by Global Reconciliation, an international non-government organisation that works to support dialogues across the boundaries of culture, religion, ethnicity, nationality, politics, and other kinds of difference. Our aim is to foster respect and understanding, to support complex and creative partnerships among people who view and experience the world in different ways so that they can use their differences to open the way for novel and creative insights. The fellowship is the preeminent award in the world that recognises contributions to the practice of reconciliation, understood in this manner. It honours individuals who have distinguished themselves by actively addressing key problems of the times, through fostering partnerships, stimulating new ways of looking at old problems, and engaging with communities to precipitate change. This year's Desmond Tutu reconciliation theme is gender reconciliation. Gender relations are fundamental to all human experience. Across human history, gendered identity has rested on the biological significance of sexual reproduction between males and females. However, its social implications and the ways in which gender is lived go far beyond such biological grounding. Gender is a fundamental basis of potential difference for productive and meaningful relationships between people. But it's also been the basis for the erasure of difference or the exercise of power, the limitation of freedoms and possibilities, and the force of violence. Over many years, the relationships between men and women have been subjected to critical scrutiny. More recently, the very concept of gender has been facing deep challenges. While the nature of the questions asked and the conclusions reached have varied greatly in relation to different cultural, religious, and ethnic frames, the process of questioning itself has been a global phenomenon. In many cases, profoundly progressive changes have resulted, while in others, the result has been increased inequality, oppression, violence, and insecurity. Global reconciliation understands reconciliation as the promotion of creative communication and practical dialogue across the boundaries of difference, in order both to preserve and protect difference and to be able to draw on it as a source for rich new meanings. In terms of gender relations, this reconciliation process includes coming to terms with the complex relations we have to our own gendered bodies and also to those of others. For this year's Desmond Tutu Award, we sought to honour individuals who have helped foment active conversations and practices across different gendered positions. We envisaged that they would be people who have worked creatively to resolve situations of gender-based violence, who have contributed through remaking gender relations to forming new possibilities in fields that may go beyond gender issues narrowly conceived. We considered them as people who would provide leadership in the ethical reworking of the relationships between genders, and who have contributed significantly to advancing both the awareness of the need for gender dialogues and the fashioning of new practices associated with them. We have chosen 3 individuals: Sophia Ibn Garba from Nigeria, Tambudza Glenda Muzenda from South Africa, and Romina Caldera from Argentina. We believe that these 3 women exemplify all of these qualities to perfection. The presenters of the awards will provide details of the marvellous achievements of these great women. In receiving the Desmond Tutu Reconciliation Fellowship, Sophia, Tambu and Romina enter a select group of people who have made outstanding contributions to the diverse practices of reconciliation in many countries and in many settings. They join past winners such as Emmanuel Jowl from South Sudan and Canada, Nanko van Buren from Brazil, Ian Campbell from the United Kingdom, Katarina Pajovic from Croatia, June Oscar from Australia, Aung San Suu Kyi from Myanmar, and Zera Mariam Free from Eritrea. On behalf of Global Reconciliation and all of you, I would like to congratulate our new fellows on their award and to thank them for their lifetime accomplishments. I hope that the receipt of the fellowship will not only empower them to continue their work, but will also inspire others to emulate their struggles in the fields of peace building, reconciliation, and the healing and rebuilding of gender relationships. Thank you very much.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce Moira Rayner to present the awards. Moira was the first Commissioner for Equal Opportunity Victoria, Commissioner of the Law Reform Commission of Western Australia. She was first Director of the Office of Children's Rights Commissioner for the City of London. Across her distinguished career, she's used her time in her official positions as an author and as an activist to address issues and support campaigns for the rights of women in society and the rights of children in the legal system.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to make it clear that in our multinational representation, I represent two nations. One is my chosen nation of Australia, and the other is my land of my birth, New Zealand, or Aotearoa, where I was born and educated, and which was the first country to acknowledge the equality of women by allowing them to vote. If I therefore mispronounce anybody's name, would you please blame my first country rather than this one and this organisation? I am very proud today to introduce, first of all, Safia Ibn-Garba. She was born in Nigeria. She's the founder and programs director of Empowering Women for Excellence initiative. She established this initiative in Kaduna, Nigeria, one of the states in Nigeria especially affected by Boko Haram activities, where women are placed under considerable constraint. While she's currently living and working in Amman, Jordan, Safia continues to work with the organisation and to support peace and conflict transformation in not only that country, but also Rwanda, Uganda, Zimbabwe, South Sudan, Ghana, Palestine, Lebanon, Sri Lanka, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Norway, Nepal, the United States, and Canada. She is a champion for gender-inclusive reconciliation through linking youth, camps, sport, and community belonging. Her work also builds capacity for girls and women to take active roles in decision-making and policy formation, and engages men to support this work. I'm very honoured, and it is my pleasure to award this year's fellowship to you, Safia. And I would now invite you to have a chat with us in accepting this presentation.
Thank you, Moira, and thank you, everyone. I am absolutely overwhelmed and happy, and I will just go through my acceptance speech. My name is Safia Ibn-Garba. I come from a country with a population of over 200 million people. That is Nigeria. People who are hardworking, incredibly intelligent, love life, often misunderstood and negatively portrayed, but are extremely friendly and warm. However, these people are very different. Different in ethnicity, language, culture, beliefs. These differences, though, have been utilized to turn us against each other, time and time again. And we now find ourselves on the brink of the country tearing apart. This is the story of my country, but this is a story of the world now. Unfortunately, this continues to happen in violent conflict-affected areas globally. Whether the issues are gender, race, resources, or other kinds of identity-based issues, the concept of difference is widening gaps, fueling hate, and being exploited to keep the citizens of the world in a state of unrest. I believe that differences make us stronger. Working to empower women over the years, and in that process, engaging with many across diverse identities, has blessed me with special moments. For example, when a woman comes to say thank you after a seminar for teaching me this or showing me this, or when a boy commits to saying no to violence against women. These moments help me and my teams continue to work tirelessly to reach our goals. Part of what I do every day enables me to contribute to building bridges. I work to empower girls and women, and in doing so, improve gender relations. But working in isolation with a certain identity group limits the potential successes and outcomes that can be achieved. That is why I work with conflict-divided groups, regardless of their identities, finding safe spaces for them to interact and facilitating dialogue among them. My work has spanned many countries and years, as you said, Moira. For example, through Empowering Women for Excellence initiative in Nigeria, over 12 years, we have reached more than 28,000 girls, boys, women, and men. And we've reached them through capacity building, information dissemination, advocacy, and cross-cutting community service projects. These projects include civic participation, educational subsidy, I have the call to prayer in the background, economic empowerment, networking, mentoring, and a number of online projects. At Generations for Peace in Amman, Jordan, I started the journey of a volunteer and a facilitator in 2008. As a staff member and now Director of Institutional Learning, I work to support and develop capacity of our volunteers, communities, and staff across 51 countries. My role is to ensure that our volunteers design, implement, monitor, and evaluate their own peace-building projects with the highest quality and top-notch support. Our work so far has benefited more than 19,000 volunteers across those countries and 1.4 million children, youth, and adults. Reconciliation, peace building, that's difficult work. It requires you to listen, it requires you to support people, to learn to trust, to discard negative stereotypes, and learn to listen again when they have stopped listening. It requires a change of behavior and attitudes, and that takes time. It means you have to learn to persevere. It means you have to learn how to unlearn. It means you remain committed to the cause, even when you want to quit. It means being invested for a lifetime. With this honor that Global Reconciliation is bestowing on me and my fellow awardees today, I'm filled with gratitude. Gratitude that our work is being recognized. Gratitude that there are people in the world who are also committed to promoting true reconciliation among and across communities. Grateful that we can continue to gather a critical mass of citizens of the world that want to live in peace and leverage our differences for good. Thank you for this honor. I appreciate all of my loved ones, those who are here and those who couldn't make it around the world. I accept wholeheartedly and pledge to continue to act in harmony with the principle of global reconciliation. And that is to promote by nonviolent means, processes of dialogue and practice across boundaries of continuing difference. Thank you.
And thank you. That was a great speech. Now I'd like to introduce you to another award winner. It's Tambutsai, I hope I got it right, Glenda Mutsenda. Tambu for short, I hope. Tambu's from South Africa, where the struggle for gender reconciliation must not only engage with the problem of material needs, but also with the needs of women to have their right to their own bodies, sexuality, and dignity. Tambu is chair of Seradef, if I pronounced it wrong, it's New Zealander and me, South Africa and Sustainable Lead Symposia in South Africa. The branch of the Africa-wide organisation was established in 2018 and focuses on conversational learning and social dialogues for change, which is very close to our deep purpose. Ms. Mutsenda is recognised for her capacity to work at grassroots level to support women's empowerment and community engagement including through the use of the uncomfortable conversations methodology, which brings different groups together face to face to deepen understanding of gender and relationships and to demystify myths and misconceptions, including about LGBTQI sexualities and identities. Tambu uses this methodology to put gender issues higher up on local policy and development agendas. She's an inspirational presence who actively leads on the basis of personal conviction, connecting local gender-related experience to institutional policy development. It is my great pleasure and honour to award the DTR Fellowship, the Desmond Tutu Reconciliation Fellowship, to you as well, Tambu. And I would love to give you the opportunity now to accept this and to say what you need to say about the work that you've been doing. Tambu.
Thank you very much, Moira. And thank you to the committee, and thank you for everybody who's here. I receive this award with gratitude, and I receive it for those who I've been working with, those who hold my hand. And I also thank my fellow awardees who are here. I have written a speech so that I can keep to time. I hope I do. Gender healing and transformation and reconciliation consciously invokes this universal love of the heart, in which the end has the capacity to overcome the very real and formidable challenges of gender oppression and injustice that have tormented human societies for literally thousands of years. This is a quote by William Kipping. In South Africa, my country where I live, we are now heading towards past 25 years of democracy, and many issues that are debated over limitations regarding reconciliation, regarding the discourses of reconciliation in my country remain unspoken or tabooed. That white elephant in the room, to some extent, stems from the promises of reconciliation since 1994, the lived realities of many whose dignity and capability is diminished in the light of entrenched inequalities. We've seen that recently with COVID. And deepened poverty is much of what many of our societies live under. Why we shy away from the pain, the shame, the vulnerability, and the very issues that hold us hostage or bondage into living our potentiality is an issue I find myself wanting to speak about. It is uncomfortable, and that is the reality we face. Let's talk about it. We are affected, all of us in South Africa and beyond our borders, by both structural and gender-based violence. And the latter in my country is cited as one of the highest in the world. And now we speak about the killings of women and children in our communities. The idea or the concept of uncomfortable conversations break barriers and social conditioning that enables healthy relationships, starting from home with our parents, us as parents, us as part of the community, to think positively of the interventions that we can work towards. Through skillfully facilitated forums, uncomfortable conversations break these barriers. They bring us together to speak with an open heart, non-judgmental, and a context that breeds healthy relationships. The way we have been working across the region has been to encourage, has been to bring people together, has been to be able to have a people that come to a level of intimacy, authenticity, and truth-telling that is sometimes so rare in our society. And in so doing, we are making our lives what we want them to be, writing a new narrative towards comfortable conversations. I will not tell you that this work is easy. This work is of a volatile nature. There are outbursts, there are strong aggressions, and as we begin to engage, we find the commonality that brings us as humanity together in understanding that social conditioning that bears upon cultural norms, religious beliefs, governmental policies, familial experiences, the media, and everyday life has potentiality for us to see differently, and we should not shy away from it. For my country where I live, the lives of women are potentially vulnerable at every given turn. We raise this from a woman who come from a country so strong, fighting apartheid. The many of the heroines that sought gender equality and gender reconciliation that would speak to gender inclusivity are no longer here. So for those who remain, we take that baton and we continue to want a better life, a better society, and a humane society. And this is a critical issue, and it is not another buzzword, because communities and families and the social order affected by violence and that which affects all the spheres of society, talking to social, economic, cultural, and political, is an issue that would help us to be a better people. Today's reconciliation process must respond to the challenges of neglect of gender equality and equity by being broader, deeper, and more inclusive than ever before. Reconciliation must have an impact at the individual, interpersonal, institutional, and socio-political levels if we are to succeed. We need a social contract that is inclusive and equitable, that enables everybody, including young people, to live in dignity, that affords women and girls the same opportunity as men and boys, that protects the sick and vulnerable, and those living with disability. Gender reconciliation speaks to healing the gender divide, comprehending the context of time, space, in which what we know matters, and how we bring together men and women and the entire societies of marginalized groups of people to the entire gender spectrum. And this is so essential and such a social capital of our community, enabling us in our knowing and our understanding and sharing to inspire each other. In my country, reconciliation has and can potentially be the catalyst for fulfilling a number of practical and symbolic purposes of acknowledging the harm inflicted upon victims and promoting social equity and human rights. Our work has always been, and this recognition speaks much more to what we have been doing, and we take this recognition with such grandness because we knew we were doing something, and we acknowledge that this time is so imminent, prevalent, that we are to take this challenge, and I take the challenge. My own family, who are practically what I have learned through with uncomfortable conversations, will attest, my sisters are here this morning, we attest to us wanting to talk about uncomfortable conversations. And as I began my work as a humanist, as a human rights advocate, I saw the need for us since 2009 to model uncomfortable conversations through discussions and that which we could not speak about, early forced child unions, pregnant women discriminated at the healthcare facilities because of their HIV status, people living with disabilities not afforded potentiality to be the best of themselves. And that speaks to other issues around diversity, equality, and inclusion. And much more than that, to speak to marginalized communities who are people on the move, including those entrenched in various levels of inequality and poverty. But starting with my own family, the violence that we suffer, whether it's through our families, through the way we live, through social norms, through harmful practices, it is something that I've found, and I've taken it upon myself, that should we have an opportunity, we should be able to be exemplary. We will not be giving to somebody else what we have not begun to try and done ourselves. And it is through uncomfortable conversations that my work in the region with various stakeholders and partners in the sub-Saharan Africa has seen us stand to begin to purposefully take those issues to a different level, where society begins to see a different narrative that we can build up on healthy relationships for ourselves and for the sake of our children, the generation that is going to be taking on as we pass on or as we leave this work for them. And I want to speak that this work requires tenacity and energy, and we cannot do it on our own. And William Kipping says, neither working alone can create gender balance in society. The sexes must work together for the balance that to be realized, collaborating in courageously new forms of experiential and transformative modalities. I would not be able to say much more if I cannot say that what Maya Angelou speaks about resonates with me. We can learn to see each other and ourselves in each other and recognize that human beings are more alike than they are unalike. And the reality in my country and many more across the borders and the globe is that the disappropriation of women remains an issue that is not only structural, but is also at policy level, and therefore requires for us to take a stand. Therefore, women can no longer be expected to speak and continue to speak louder and have their voices heard as though humanity had stopped hearing. I therefore urge us to hear those voices, where we are in our own rooms to inspire, inform, and impart. And in that, transforming a power within, opening doors, opening hearts, so that we may peer into change and transformation and restoration. Gender reconciliation should be viewed as a process from through which society can move from a divided past to a shared future. I'm here to celebrate with men and women and all society that we can encourage each other to do so. My hope and belief is that if we are to live together, not only in this country, but as humanity, we can no longer be separated. We need to feel for the other so that their betterment is for us as well, and create the world which we want to be in. Our work in the region has highlighted that. In the small communities in Malawi, in Tanzania, in Uganda, in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, and anywhere else we have worked, we have seen the hearts open. We have seen the voices being heard. And to this, I cannot deny the fact that we have already done what we have already been doing, and most of it has been done. When I talk to Ubuntu, Ubuntu is a traditional African concept. The word comes from the Zulu and Xhosa languages and can roughly be translated as a humanity towards the others. Ubuntu embodies all those virtues that maintain harmony and the spirit of sharing among members of society. It implies an appreciation of beliefs, constant awareness as an individual, taking actions today and reflecting on the past, and will have far-reaching consequences for the future. A person with Ubuntu knows his or hers or their place in the universe and is consequently able to integrate gratefully with other individuals. One aspect of Ubuntu that is that at all times the individual effectively represents the people from among whom he or she or they come from. and therefore tries to behave or be in accordance to the highest levels that exhibits the virtues that society holds in peace and harmony. In other words, Ubuntu is a manifestation of gender reconciliation. And to do my best, I ask that you come with me. As I give my gratitude, I would not be able to do this without my family, my colleagues, my friends, Sarah Dev, Azali Health, who I've been working with through time around gender reconciliation, working with men in South Africa, promoting healing and reconciliation. To the partners of possibility, the moment is right for us to work together, ahead and thinking about education and how the theme of gender reconciliation in our schools is so pivotal at a time when we find South Africa rising and becoming a global influence. Last but not least, I would not be without my daughter, whose selfless love is beyond and what I can comprehend, because she is assertive in understanding our talks and when we have uncomfortable conversations. She reminds me of being human. I thank you, Maya. I thank you all. And I thank everybody else who's here and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tamu. Thank you so much.
It's with great pleasure that I present the 2020 Desmond Tutu Reconciliation Fellowship to Romina Caldera, Comisario de la Comisaría de la Mujer y Familia La Plata, Argentina, in recognition of outstanding work in the field of gender reconciliation and the healing of wounds created within communities by gender violence and social conflict. Romina is Chief Superintendent of the Police Station for Women and the Family in La Plata, Argentina. She has worked with the Women's Police for over 20 years in the struggle to end violence against women. Police stations responding specifically to violence against women are a distinctive interdisciplinary innovation that have emerged in post-colonial nations of the Global South during the late 20th century, embedding the criminal justice system in a radically different paradigm of trust-based care and prevention. Romina is a resourceful leader who works tirelessly in her community to educate about gender-based violence in recognition of the vitality brought about by believing in the strengths of local people and nurturing trust-based relationships that open a space for women and children and families to take a step of their own. Romina's work extends well beyond familiar patterns of policing in engaging with teenagers to raise awareness of violence in relationships before it becomes normalized, assisting men to unlearn violence and helping women to rebuild their lives after the experience of violence. So congratulations, Romina, on this achievement and on all of your work.
Ante todo, buenos días allí en Australia, buenas tardes acá en Argentina.
First of all, good morning here, there in Australia, and good afternoon here in Argentina. I can't express how grateful and honored I am to have you here today. To have been nominated and selected to receive the Desmond Tutu Reconciliation Fellowship is a great privilege for which I greatly thank the selection committee. I would like to congratulate the other two selected recipients, Sophia Gardner from Asia and Tambu Glenda Musenda from South Africa. It fills me with pride and happiness to be part of this fellowship, and I put myself at your disposal, joining to participate in the processes of dialogues and conversations between continents and cultures in relation to our work on gender, which is which is different in different social contexts. Without a doubt, the exchange of ideas and the dialogue we are engaged in foster mutual generosity based on respect, solidarity, and the common good for a culture of peace amongst people. The receipt of this scholarship supports my efforts to continue building a better world free of violence and based on love. I represent the police of the province of Buenos Aires, Argentina, an institution where I've worked for more than 22 years. Most of my career was dedicated to working with the problems of violence against women, as well as working with children and adolescents. I've been head of the police station for women and the family in Berisso for a period of 3 years, commissioner for women and the family in La Plata for almost 10 years, and tutor of women in police training and accompaniment at the Juan Vucetich Police School, specializing in gender policies for a period of 4 years. In recent years, this work has been in constant development, giving special priority to teaching in conjunction with other police personnel and political supporters, all working together to face the problem of family and gender violence at all levels. These are serious social problems in which our country is immersed, which have been exacerbated by the challenges brought recently by the terrible global pandemic of COVID-19. Reflecting on our work of recent years, it's worth mentioning an initiative that was carried out together with the interdisciplinary team of the Commissioner for Women and the Family, including a lawyer, psychologist, and social worker. The initiative involved visits to educational establishments to work with young people regarding violence in adolescent dating relationships and the early emotional dynamics where situations of violence tend to become normalized. This is important because when we don't detect these patterns early, they can lead to serious intrafamily conflicts in the future. The focus of this work was to intervene early to prevent these crimes that have been increasing in recent years. Workshops were started with groups of young people working with some of the cases reported at the police station and opening those cases to debate and analysis. Obviously, we took into account the preservation of anonymity and the personal circumstances of the victims and their identity. But through this process, in this way, adolescents were brought into the conversation. They were brought to the discussion table using a methodology of this happened to a friend, an acquaintance, a family member, a neighbor, etc. We used various approaches related to violence and microaggression. Examples were discussed, such as jealousy about whether a boyfriend's jealousy about what the girlfriend wears, her makeup, or other forms of restriction of her identity and tastes. These discussions with young people allowed them to recognize that violence can start to manifest itself in relationships in subtle ways, and that it's sometimes difficult for them to identify themselves as victims, and we suspect difficult to report because there's often also fear and shame or bullying, etc. This can lead to underreporting of violence, so dealing with these young people also allows police and doctors to identify and assist them where needed and to work on prevention. Another important achievement worth noting has been the interaction between the Commissioner for Women and the Family and the security police personnel units that has ensured that perpetrators of violence are apprehended quickly and effectively if they breach any order given by the Public Prosecutor's Office, the family courts and/or the peace court, such as harassment, cessation, or any other preventive measure. A great deal of attention is also given to social work alongside the processes of justice, providing the emotional support required during the process of attitude changes in families. Cases of femicide and transfemicide have also increased throughout the country, which has generated an even greater commitment to violence prevention and the dissemination of information about personal safety provisions. Removing the fear of reporting has been an important focus, ensuring that victims feel that they are able to ask for help without fear. We've carried out different training activities accompanied by relatives of femicide victims. These relatives who've suffered so much tirelessly fight to eradicate violence, taking the pain of having lost their daughter or sister or mother or granddaughter at the hands of femicide and transforming that pain into love and providing tools for other people so that these painful acts do not happen again. I'm also a member of a feminist organization called Las Juanas, which is dedicated to working with women in situations of gender violence and performs social work with vulnerable sectors of society. The organization is based in the city of Barizo and provides free legal advice to women victims of gender violence and sponsorship in legal cases for violence and family issues, delivery of clothing, footwear and merchandise for people in vulnerable situations, visibility and awareness and sensitization campaigns about violence against women, virtual seminars on gender violence, a radio program in which gender issues are addressed, and social programs for women with enterprises to empower them economically. In the province of Buenos Aires, we have the Ministry of Women, Gender Policies and Sexual Diversity, headed by Estela Diaz, whom I deeply respect and admire, who with her entire team works tirelessly together with the police. I'm currently finishing an international university diploma in emergency psychology, self-care and preventive support for different victims and personnel, intervening in crisis, emergency, disasters and catastrophes. A resource that will complement my knowledge acquired academically and professionally, and that will allow me to reinforce the methods of assistance to victims in emergency situations. My personal goal is to constantly train myself to acquire new tools and resources that allow me to help and collaborate with people in complex situations from the professional, but also the humanitarian, from a professional, but also a humanitarian perspective, combining a gender perspective with human rights in the search of justice and peace. Thank you again to the selection committee and to Kerry Carrington, who was the person who nominated me for this scholarship. Thanks to my family, particularly my father and child, who I love very much, and my friends, my superiors at the police, and all the people who are with us today.
La institución policial y a todas las personas que hoy están aquí. Muchas gracias.
Finally, let me introduce Jure Dara. Jure is a person who has contributed enormously across the many decades of her work in the area of women's issues. She is the chair of Global Reconciliation.
Thank you, Paul James. My name is Jure Dara, and as the chair of Global Reconciliation, I would like to add my congratulations to the 3 new Desmond Tutu Fellows, Romina Caldera, Safia Ibangaha, and Tambu Muzenda. We have seen and heard today how extraordinary these women are. Nobody could fail to be moved by their work and achievements. Romina's work with the women police in Argentina will surely become a model for similar projects around the world. Tambu's conduct of uncomfortable conversations in South Africa would provide a powerful tool for facilitating dialogue between men and women in many countries. And Safia's accomplishments in gender equality and peace building in 2 continents will inspire reconciliation brokers for years to come. Romina, Tambu, and Safia perfectly embody the ideals and aspiration of the Desmond Tutu Reconciliation Fellowship. They are all courageous and innovative and have demonstrated both imagination and tenacity in bringing their personal visions to realization. All bring credit to the revered name of Emeritus Archbishop Desmond Tutu, in whose honor the fellowship is awarded. We at Global Reconciliation will now be moving to the next phase of the Desmond Tutu award process. We are building an archive to present the work of our awardees and to make it an accessible means where people may seek to emulate it around the world. Conversations and dialogues about gender and reconciliation will stimulate further ongoing work in this field. All of this material will be available via Global Reconciliation's website, through our new dialogue platform, Aid Exchange. We invite you warmly to visit these sites and participate in the ongoing discussions. In bringing this award ceremony to a close, I would like to add my personal thanks to all the people to this year's awards process who helped us to build this day. Paul Komisarov, Sally Gardner, Paul James, Moira Rayner, Victoria Baldwin, Elizabeth Cath, Pat Anderson, Jemima McKenna, Christine Woodruff, Kiera O'Reilly, Kerry Carrington, Jake Bond, and Michael Drapek. Thank you all for your attendance, and goodbye from us in Melbourne, Australia.